always there. I hope that you are having a good Sunday morning. Welcome to our live church service here on Facebook and YouTube. I'm glad that you've joined us today. The good thing about having it like this is that it's always available for you at any time. So, if you sleep in and miss church, you can watch it later. Although I love the conversation that goes on in the comments there. So, I think it's great if you can join live and join the comments because there's always some really lively discussion. We are in the middle of a grief series right now called Good Grief. And last week, the conversation that was happening in the chat during the live feed was just really raw. People were sharing some pretty vulnerable information about their life experiences and things that they were grieving, and it was beautiful. So, I don't know about you, but it's still good to get online and connect with people, and we're still able to share and do life together even in this virtual format, and I love that. So, I'm glad if you watch this later, but also if you jump on while it's live, you can partake in the conversation while you're there, and it's pretty amazing. So, good morning. I hope that you are all doing well. My name is Jenna. I am one of the pastors at East Coast Church. And like I said, we're in the middle of this series called Good Grief. So we started off the series talking about denial, talking about that protective phase where your body gives you space so that you can physically actually survive whatever loss or threat it is that you're facing. But then when we move out of that denial stage is when you get into all of the really raw emotional stages of grief. And so Adria spoke last week about anger. And as I said, there was a lot of good experience shared, good things shared about bad experiences, I guess I should say, in the chat, and just about the grief that we all suffer, and moving through that stage of anger, and how important that stage of anger is, that you have to be in touch with that anger. And then today, this week, we're going to talk about bargaining. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I still want to talk about anger right now, because I'm angry. This week, I've been very angry. And I'm going to do a very un-Jenna-like thing, and I'm going to talk about something that potentially could be viewed as political. For those of you who know me at all, I'm a 9 on the Enneagram. I'm the peacemaker. My top strength is empathy, so I see multiple different viewpoints, and I see validity in all the different viewpoints, and I have a really hard time landing hard on any line of any decision ever, because I just see all the different possibilities and all the different viewpoints, and therefore I don't speak out on things. But I'm going to speak out about the murder of George Floyd this week, because I can't stay silent anymore about this issue. It's just something about this one triggered me, and it's one of many, 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 many black people who have been killed by the people who are trying or supposed to be protecting and serving. And enough is enough. It was enough already. I remember when I was 10 years old, that's when the whole Rodney King thing happened. For those, I'm showing my age here. I was 10 years old when there was video of police brutality against Rodney King. And I remember that, and as a 10-year-old, I didn't really understand. But for crying out loud, I'm almost 40 now. Okay, so we're talking 30 years later, and look what we're still dealing with. Enough is enough. I'm angry about it. I'm really angry, and I want to do something. And I think we should be doing something. This is an injustice. We can't just sit by and cluck our tongue and think, oh, how horrible, that really is bad. We have to take a stand that Black lives matter. Sure, I don't want to hear you say all lives matter right now, or, all lives do matter. You're right, all humanity matters. But our Black brothers and sisters are being treated like they don't matter. So that's why we have to say Black lives matter. And we have to say that to whoever listens. So, I want to do it, it's easy to feel helpless, right? Because this is such a big situation, and how can I do anything to affect police officers? They have the power, right? Well, you know what? We live in a democracy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take action. This week, I'm going to be writing to my senator, to my congressman, to the sheriff of my county, to the chief of police, to the president of the United States of America, to the governor of my state. I'm going to write to all of them, and I'm going to say this issue, the issue of police brutality against black people, matters to me. And I need you to fix it. And no, this didn't happen here in my county this time. But I don't want it to happen here in my county ever. So I need to see you put something in place to make it stop. I need there to be clear policies that are going to be enforced. I need there to be extra training for our officers. I need officers to be required to go interact with black youth, to get to know them, to start seeing them as human beings and not threats. And I need my elected officials to show that this issue is important to them. And come November, my vote is going to go to the people who show that this issue is important to them. That's how I'm going to act. And meanwhile, I'm going to curb my own prejudices. I'm going to recognize my white privilege. And I'm not going to poo-poo it anymore. I'm not going to sit by and just, pretend that it doesn't happen or try to downplay it to show that I'm a good person. I am a good person, and I do love black people, and I have black people in my life. Yes, okay, I know that, but I also know that I still hold privilege that they don't have, and it's not fair. And I'm gonna do everything I can to integrate my life with my black friends' lives. We need to get to a place where we are familiar with each other, like really familiar, like really know each other on a deep level. And until we accept each other into each other's lives like that, this isn't going to get fixed. Okay, but one step at a time. So I'm going to start by writing letters because I'm angry, and my anger is spurring me on to action. And I hope that you're angry about this too. We should be angry. And I'm thinking about Jesus, right? So I know that people are talking about how there's looting and there's burning, and that doesn't fix anything. I'm not condoning looting or burning of property or anything like that, but my God, they've been screaming this. Peaceful protests. Yeah, you should protest peacefully. Well, how much more peaceful can you get than kneeling during the national anthem? And we told them that was unacceptable. So at some point, what do? You throw a rock through a window. I was thinking about Jesus, right? How like Jesus is this peaceful individual who loves and accepts everybody and brings this message. And so all throughout his ministry, he healed people, and he reconciled, and he taught, and he held public gatherings to share this message that everybody is included, that no individual is worth more than any other individual, and that we needed to stop excluding people from the table, that we needed to stop saying only certain amount of people were worth this heaven or whatever it is. Only certain amount of people are here, and then everybody else is just kind of out here, the unclean. No, Jesus came to say it was everybody. And at the end of his ministry, right before, very shortly before he went and got crucified, he went to the temple, and he saw people there selling sacrifices to the poor. They were exploiting the poor to say, hey, give us your last money so that we can make sure you're okay. And Jesus is like, they don't get it. I've been talking about this, and they don't get it. And you know what he did? He drove them out of the temple. He turned their tables upside down. He caused destruction because they weren't listening. So at some point, Jesus did fill with a righteous anger, and he had to do something because they weren't listening to his peaceful words. Sorry. I'm going to take a step back now and breathe and just say, sometimes you have to hold on to a little bit of anger in order to make justice happen. And we need to demand it. We need to not criminalize people. They're screaming and they're rioting, and we need to say, why are they doing it? You know, what's their message, and how can I fix the message, not villainize them even more? Okay, I'm gonna step off my political platform right now. Those are all my views, by the way. I did not run this by the leadership team of East Coast Church, so I'm totally going rogue here. So if you have issues with it, you can take that up with me and not with the church. Just putting that out there. I thought it was important. So that's anger. And we talked about anger last week, and now we're going to talk about bargaining, because we are in the middle of this grief series, and we have so much to grieve this time, this 2020, right? I mean, we've lost people, we've lost jobs and income, we've lost security. We're worried about this virus and this pandemic, and even as we start to reopen, we're reopening differently than we were before, and so we're realizing that the life we had before is gone, at least for a good amount of time. It's not going to be the same, and so all of a sudden we're having to go through and grieve. And today we're going to talk about bargaining, which technically is a little bit out of order. So the stages of grief, the traditional stages of grief as they go are denial, anger, depression. I don't remember. I'm sure Sally knows. I just lost it. Bargaining and acceptance, but I lost one in there somewhere. But at any rate, the point is that when you're going through grief, you don't always go through all the stages in order as the model shows. You move back and forth between the stages, and some people skip stages altogether. So we're skipping over depression. Adria's going to talk about depression next week, and today I'm going to talk about bargaining. So this bargaining stage, that's when you get this idea that you can take back control over what you've lost. And so you start to engage in bargaining type behavior. This can look like bargaining with God or a higher power, just saying like, oh, I'll be a better person if you give this back to me. I'll do X, Y, and Z, or, you know, something along those lines. Or it doesn't have to be bargaining with God. It could just be bargaining in general, like to say, oh, here's this plan I have. Like, you know, next time I'm going to make sure that I don't listen to that doctor and do this, that, or the other, or next time I'll do this so that I don't end up here. Essentially, it's all about trying to take control ourselves over our pain and put a scenario in place in which our pain doesn't exist. So bargaining is a stage where we're gripping tightly to control, and we're not willing to surrender and let go our control. We are holding on to it, and we're trying to fix it. We're trying to fix our situation somehow, in some way. And we've been talking about Job a lot, because Job in the Bible goes through all of the stages of grief. He experienced a tremendous amount of loss. He lost all of his possessions. He lost all of his children. He lost his physical health. So he had a lot of loss, and as such, of course, he went through all of the stages of grief, definitely. And so bargaining is no different. So we are going to take a look at Job chapter 29, and we're going to see Job going through the stage of bargaining. Job says, "How I long for the months gone by, for the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. Oh, for the days when I was in my prime, when God's infinite friendship blessed my house, when the Almighty was still with me and my children were around me." All right, so Job here is saying, I don't like this pain that I'm in, and I want to be in a place where I'm not in pain anymore. And he's saying, if only I could be young again. Like, oh, if I would just be young again, if I would just be in my righteous position again, then I wouldn't be feeling this pain. So he's trying to time travel. So Job's bargaining is like a time traveling kind of wish. Like, oh, if I could just turn back time, if I could just make myself younger, or if I would have stayed a little bit more, little righteous, little pious, a little bit longer and held on to that, then I wouldn't find myself in this place anymore. That's an example of Job's bargaining. It's him trying to gain control over something that he has no control over. Nobody can time travel. It's not possible to go back and change things. So in order to get through the bargaining phase, we have to get to a place where we can surrender, where we can let go. King David went through a time of grief as well. So David had a son that was ill when he was born, and David went through this time of mourning, or not mourning, but he was trying to make sure that his son would live. And let's look what happened when David reaches a place of surrender. It's coming from 2 Samuel chapter 12. This is when the child was still sick, by the way. It says, David pleaded with God for the child. He fasted and went into the house and spent the night lying on the ground. The elders of his house stood beside him to get him up from the ground. But he refused, and he would not eat any food with them. On the 7th day, the child died. David's servants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. For they thought, while the child was still living, we spoke to David, but he would not listen to us. How can we tell him the child is dead? He may do something desperate. David noticed that his servants were whispering among themselves, and he realized the child was dead. Is the child dead? He asked. Yes, they replied. He is dead. Then David got up from the ground. After he'd washed, put on lotions, and changed his clothes, he went into the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he went to his own house, and at his request they served him food, and he ate. His servants asked him, Why are you acting this way? While the child was alive, you fasted and wept, but now that the child is dead, you get up and eat. He answered, While the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live, but now he's dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. This illustrates the concept of surrender, although some might argue that David's maybe in the denial phase as well. But really, David reached this place where he said, I can't change it. No amount of fasting on my part, no amount of fasting or praying is going to bring my child back at this point. I can't change it. And so there's surrender. So you have to give yourself time to properly mourn a loss. But at some point, you do have to realize that you can't get it back exactly the way it was. And you have to move forward with the new normal. But the beauty of it is that all of nature, all of God's creation, everything on heaven and earth, there's this cyclical nature about it. It's a birth and death and rebirth. There's always the resurrection that's kind of built and woven throughout everything in tapestry. All things are new. God is always creating all things new. And that's the beauty of it, is when you get to a place where you don't hold so tightly and you let go a little bit and you surrender that control that you have, that need to try to fix everything yourself, then you open your hands to a little bit of beauty coming in. And it's not like it's erasing the loss ever. I'll give you an example from my own personal life. I was married for 14 years and I struggled to conceive that whole time. I wanted to be a mom more than anything. And I was not able to. I was not able to conceive a child, and I struggled with infertility for a very, very long time. And we even started the adoption process, and then we encountered obstacles on the way during the adoption process, and so I never got to be a mom. And I tell you what, there was a lot of instances over the years where I would try to bargain my way out of it. And I would say, oh God, I'll raise the child perfectly, exactly the way it's going to be like a minister for your word, and I'll do this and I'll do that, just give me a baby. And it didn't happen. And once I got to a place where I just surrendered that and said, I'm probably never going to have a baby. and I just let that go, then my heart started to change. And the loss doesn't go away. The hole that leaves in your heart doesn't go away. You know, every Mother's Day or baby showers, I have a hard time with struggling with the fact that I wasn't a mom. There's sadness. But I'm not in this deep, deep, like, pit of despair anymore. And in fact, I have fully embraced the life I had. I would not choose to be a mother right now if I had the choice. I have moved past the point where I want to be a mom. So I'm always going to have a twinge of sadness over the fact that I didn't get to have it. But where I am right now, I'm happy with where I am. I'm happy with the life, and I'm seeing the beauty that there is and the freedom of not having a child. It's actually, it's very comforting, and I enjoy that, and I enjoy the life that I have, and I love that I have my friends' kids that I can pour into and love and give all of the love that I have to give to children. But then I get to give them back when things get difficult, and I tell you what, there's something to be said for that. So I'm thankful for the fact that I'm not a mom now. I have found myself thanking God that I'm not a mom, because there's so much that I'm doing right now that I couldn't be doing if I were a mom. So, you know, you move on and you get to a place where you surrender, and then you accept something new, and it becomes beautiful. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 43, 18 through 19. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland. God is making a way through the desert and streams in the wasteland. Streams in a wasteland. It doesn't mean that you're leaving the wasteland, but it means there's a beautiful stream flowing through it. And when we surrender control over our circumstances that we can't change, it brings us to that stream. It brings us to new life, something fresh and something beautiful. And so, my friends, that's what I have to say about bargaining today. Next week, Adria is going to talk about depression. And so that is, I think, very important to discuss. I think it's something that a lot of us deal with, and I hope you'll tune in because it's going to be great. And we're going to be sharing, and I'm excited for it. And thank you for being a part of East Coast Church. Thank you for allowing me to speak my mind at the beginning of this sermon. I just thank you. I know that you all love me, and I just thank you for loving me, and thank you for hearing my voice. And I hope that it doesn't fall on deaf ears, and I hope that we can do, however small it may seem, that we can do something to try to change this circumstance and speak out for our Black brothers and sisters. It's so important. I want to remind you of what we have going on here at East Coast Church. During this time while we're all virtual, we have, obviously, Sunday mornings we go live at 10 a.m. We have Monday evenings, we release a video called This Is How I Worship. It's this series where people are showing different ways that they are worshiping and connecting with God at this time. Because I know we're all used to worshiping with song and corporate worship, but there's other ways to worship, and it's really been amazing. Last week, the video was about Greg running, and I just loved it. It was great, and so we hope that you'll continue to contribute to that series. This Is How I Worship. If you'd like to, you can send your video to pastors@eastcoastcc.org. Adria does a beautiful job editing all of the videos together, so you can just send rough footage and she will edit it together and make it nice and neat and great. You can even send multiple videos and it'll be perfect. So send your worship videos to send your This Is How I Worship videos to pastors@eastcoastcc.org. And then on Wednesday nights, Adria and her son Hawkins go live for Ask Hawkins Anything. That's our series for kids. It's live on Facebook and YouTube, and Hawkins will answer questions, preferably about Jesus, but seriously about anything. So if your kids have questions that they want to see Hawkins answer, have them send us those questions. They can text them to Adria directly, or you can send them to askhawkins@eastcoastcc.org. and we'll get your questions answered by Hawkins, who is super entertaining and really fun to watch. And then on Friday nights, I lead a guided faith meditation to help you just kind of take a few minutes to take a breath and get connected with God. So we've got a lot going on here at East Coast. We're still here. We're still kicking. If you would like to get in the loop, if you're not already, you can text the word loop to 561-349-4500. That way, any announcements that we have or anything special that we have going on, you'll make sure that you get a text message about it. Also, if you would like to support what we have going on here at East Coast Church, I encourage you to give. We operate on a very, very small budget, but during this quarantine, giving has been much lower, which is understandable. We're facing very scary times and people are losing their jobs, and I'm not guilting anyone into anything, but I'm just saying, if you have it in your heart and if you have the capacity to give, please do give so that we can keep doing this. The pastors are not taking salary on this. We're doing this volunteer, and we're really just trying to meet our operating costs to be functioning as an electronic church at this point. So as you can imagine, it's minimal, but we need the funds to come in if it's going to continue to be able to happen. So if you would like to give, you can do so on our website at eastcoast.church by clicking online giving, or you can just text any dollar amount to 84321. So say you want to give $50. You just text, like the message of your text will be 50, and you're going to text that to your recipient, which will be 84321, and it's as easy as that. It'll get you set up, and you can then just text to give any amount. But thank you for being a part of East Coast Church. Thank you for being part of the discussions. I really enjoy all of you, and I love you, and thank you, and I hope that you